Hey friends, you're probably familiar with Azure Kubernetes Service, but did you know that AKS is now available as a managed service on Windows Server and Windows IoT operating systems? Lior Kamrat is here to show me how it works today on Azure Friday. Hey friends, I'm Scott Hanselman and it's Azure Friday. I'm here with Lior Kamrat who's going to show me something cool in the Azure IoT plus AKS space. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Scott. I hope you're feeling good.
I'm feeling like $1,000,000. So I've been loving all the great stuff you can do on the edge right now. We've been pushing all kinds of stuff to the edge, but I understand that you have an edge demo that people may not have seen before.
Yeah, and it's who counts, but this is like the fourth time that we're talking about all these type of stuff, from different angles, and it's kind of interesting to see. I've been working on this space for 3 years now and seen this evolve, and the AKS family is now getting expanded. There are newborns into the family, so that's going to be cool. And yeah, for sure, always like to bring my demos to you.
So what does it mean to have AKS support for a particular operating system? You're supporting a node that's as part of an AKS instance?
Well, it's actually bringing the entire AKS offering, but in a small form factor to low power devices like Intel NUC, which is what I'm going to show you today, and other devices. You can see here on the screen. What we're doing with AKS right now is we are taking it basically outside of Azure. The entire hybrid motion, and specifically with Azure Arc, was really all about building Azure outside of Azure. And part of it is also taking our hero offerings, AKS obviously one of those, and make those accessible to customers and users to be able to use that outside of Azure. So AKS Edge Essentials can be deployed basically on a small footprint, low power device like Intel NUC, and you can deploy either Kubernetes, like full-blown Kubernetes, or even K3S, which is what we're going to see today.
Interesting. Did you say K3S instead of K8S?
Yeah, actually, it's both, because what we want to do is we want to support those small form factor deployments. So think about use cases like factory floors or retail stores, gas stations that only need a single purpose or just a tiny footprint of a Kubernetes distribution. So what we want to do is we want to bring them AKS as a managed service, but to be able to host those applications and services at the edge.
Yeah, I actually learned about K3S from Alex Ellis, who helped me set up, as you recall, my Raspberry Pi Kubernetes cluster, which gets you set up very, very quickly. So K3S is a very great project for any kind of IoT.
Right. And what I want to do today, Scott, is I want to show you how we are taking basically an application that was designed to work in both the cloud, for example, for a dev scenario and integration, and then move that into the edge to be deployed on basically a production AKS Edge Essential environment. So let's just see that in action. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. So what we're seeing here is I'm RDP'd into my Intel NUC. And to show you that this is actually an Intel NUC, let's just do a zoom it here. And you can see that this is an Intel NUC. And this is a pretty small machine, right? We see like 16 gigs of RAM. It's a pretty small machine. And also, we can see that it's deployed with Windows 11 IoT Enterprise. So that's important, right? Now, what I have installed here is I actually have the AKS Edge Essentials bits, right? So that means that literally AKS is running on that Windows 11 IoT. And to show you how it looks like, basically, these are the models that we have. So you can see that we have like partial models, CLI models to support that offering. And also,
go ahead and zoom in on that for me.
Yeah.
So you've got all your PowerShell modules installed and ready to be. So you've got all the PowerShell flexibility and configurability installed on this Windows Intel NUC.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I want to show you also is I want to show you the deployment, right? So what we can see here is just run that. And we can see that if I'm running the edge deployment info, I will get the information out of the deployment. So this is basically what is installed right now on the cluster. So these are the environment variables that are related to this deployment. And you can see that I have like my IP and everything. This is internal. This is my own LAN here at the home office, and I'm running that Edge Essential. And even more importantly than that, like people are asking, okay, so how do you go by and deploy this as code, right? Now, obviously the cluster right now is already deployed, so I'm not going to redeploy the cluster because we want to show the application rollout and all those good stuff. But you can see that I have this JSON manifest basically describing the cluster. We can see the IPs, we can see the CPU count, like how much CPU I'm allocating to that cluster, the amount of RAM, and this is basically slicing a piece out of that NUC machine and allocate that towards the AKS Edge Essentials cluster.
Okay, I want to make sure that we level set though, because folks may not get it. And by folks, I mean me. So when we think of AKS, it is a managed Kubernetes server. It runs in Azure in the cloud. And I was thinking in my head that like, okay, Azure's managing all of this, the control plane, it is visible in the Azure portal. And then maybe I might have a node that's running elsewhere on the edge, in the in my garage, or maybe if I'm running a grocery store, I've got everything controlled at the home office and I've got a single node out there. Are you saying that this is a full, complete instance of AKS,
This is a full
still
complete
managed by Azure, but it's inside the NUC?
Correct. This is a full complete instance, full complete deployment of AKS, including the control plane, and everything is sitting on the NUC. And by ARC enabling that cluster, which I'm going to show you next, is the fact that now that you have that representation of that AKS cluster in Azure. So if you remember, a few sessions back when we did one of those episodes, we talked about projection of resources. And this is a great example of that, because what we're doing, we're taking that AKS cluster and we are projecting that cluster as a first party or a first class citizen inside our API via Azure Arc. So that's what we're going to see.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I dig it so far.
All right. So let's switch to Azure. And first of all, to level set what we have here, right? We have a couple of clusters. We have AKS cluster. This is just a standard cluster. And we also have the Contoso AKS IoT cluster. That's the cluster that I just showed you. So I just want to level set, just kind of so you will be able to see those resources. And what I want to show you next is the actual application that we have deployed, right? So what we have here is we have this application deployed on both clusters, and I'm opening this side by side. Let me refresh this here, and let's take a quick look at what we're seeing here, okay? This is Contoso Supermarket, and the use case that we're trying to highlight here is a situation where you have an application that was developed for the edge, right, to run on those low power devices. In this case, a retail use case, but also you have the cloud where sometimes you want to do the integration testing, the actual development and all that. So in that case, what we're going to see is basically a situation where we are developing in the cloud or doing some integration test and then rolling that update after we've done all the testing into the edge. And to take it one step further, you can see here that this IP here actually represents AKS. You can see that it's a public IP that's available right now. And this IP that I have right here has my LAN IP. And you can see a big difference between those two applications. It's actually the same application, but the difference here is that the one that is deployed on the NUC, right, that's the so-called the production deployment. And that already have the camera feed coming from actually building 25 on campus to show how that integration is going to work and how we're going to roll out that change.
Very cool. All right. Interesting. So production is on the inside, not the outside.
Right, because this is a retail scenario and we have the NUC on a retail store, and this is what connected to the cameras, the point of sale, everything runs there. But we want to show how we're developing this in the cloud and then rolling that update.
All right, dig it.
Right. So let's come back to Azure. This is what we've seen before, right? We have those two clusters. Let's dive a bit deeper into the clusters so we can start connecting the dots. So this is the AKS cluster. Again, nothing fancy about this. This is just a 2-node cluster that I have deployed in Azure. You can see the version. Nothing too shabby about that. But the one thing that I do want to highlight is, again, we're coming back to this world of GitOps, because this is how we are actually go by and rolling those applications against those clusters. We're using the Flux extension. And the nice thing about AKS is that you don't need to ARC enable an AKS cluster, because the Flux extension that will be responsible for listening to the Git repository, we already got basically a first-class extension against AKS. It's not like ARC that you need to have ARC enabled and then install the extension. So Flux is available today against AKS. So that's pretty neat. And what I did with this Flux extension, I actually pointed to a Git repository where we have that application deployed. And we're going to dive deeper into this Git repository right now. So if I look here at the GitOps configuration, right, and the first thing that I want to show you is that, let's just zoom in here. This is the Git repository that I'm targeting. And you can also notice that this is part of a branch, right? Sorry, part of a fork, because I don't want to update the production quote unquote GitHub repository. I want to update my own fork because I'm doing the integration test and I want to abuse that fork so I will not hit the production, right? So this is my fork. Now, more importantly, what we're going to see here under customization is where the actual manifest being targeted. So here under path, you can see that I have the path and it's also pointing to dev. So this is going to be the main difference between the cluster. We have one YAML file that is describing the Kubernetes deployment on the edge, and one YAML file that is describing the Kubernetes deployment of the application in Azure on top of AKS, which is what we're seeing right now.
All right, very cool. I'm wondering how hard this would be to set up for myself, but it doesn't seem like it's that complicated.
No, it's not, because at the end of the day, what we did is with the Flux extension, we made it very easy for you to just know your Git repository, your sync interval, like how much do you want the Flux to, or in what intervals you want Flux to listen into the Git repository, and then you're off to the races. All you need to do is just to know the path of your application deployment YAML manifest.
Well, if the hardest thing is YAML, then I might be able to pull it off.
Right. Well, that I can't fix, unfortunately, but we can try our best. So this is the Contoso AKS IoT, and you can see that this is an Arc-enabled, right, Kubernetes cluster. Right. Remember, we said that this is how we are getting the representation of that IoT cluster in Azure by Arc-enabling that. So again, AKS fully managed offering, but Arc-enabled, and we talked about the K3S thing at the beginning, right? You can see here that in the distribution, this is actually a K3S deployment. You can also see the exact version of that deployment. So again, no smoke and mirrors. This is literally K3S distribution. And today with AKS Edge Essential, like I mentioned, you can choose between a full-blown Kubernetes distribution or K3S. It's literally just a flag that you're changing. So I decided to go with K3S because it's a bit more low footprint distribution. And this is a single purpose cluster, just running that point of sale application that I just showed you.
Right.
Now,
and for our friends that are listening, the difference between K3S and K8S, and why they call it K3S, is that it's just shorter, right? It's got fewer dependencies, fewer integrations and add-ons. It's the bare minimum of what you need to run an effective Kubernetes cluster. But it's still it's the same source code, same upstream versions.
Exactly, and it's a classic distribution for running something like this, like a point of sale application that only got few functionalities that it needs to serve. Now, I want to show you the difference here before I'm diving into the application and for us to do the update here. Again, same, you can see that this is the same fork, but the difference here is the actual path. So here, this is the AKS Edge Essential, and here I'm targeting the prod path, which has the YAML file that the main difference between the two is that one has the camera integration and another one doesn't. So because we don't need the cameras at on the cloud, because it doesn't mean anything. The cameras are actually sitting in the store, so that's what we want to interact with. So that's what we're going to shoot. So that's the GitOps basically portion of it. That's the difference in terms of the path that we are targeting. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically start a rolling update. One update will be in the cloud, and then we're going to roll that into the production. Before I go by and do that, Scott, I want to show you the nodes here. So let's take a look at the nodes here and of the cluster. So on the top, I have AKS. So you can see that this is AKS. Nothing fancy about that. And this one is the IoT or the Edge Essential deployment. One thing to notice is the CBL Mariner, which is kind of interesting, right? What we have right now with AKS is also the option to deploy CBL Mariner as the underlying operating system of the nodes, including the control plane. And we also have the same thing here at the edge. Now, this is important because this is a Microsoft-owned or Microsoft-developed Linux distribution that we developed for those type of use cases. So, and it's also a distribution that we control. So you can imagine security rollouts, all those good stuff. So that's one thing that I wanted to show you as well.
Right, right. And CBL in this context means Common Base Linux, and it's just the packages you need for the cloud. It's got full
Right.
validation that it runs well in Azure. It's not just, hey, Microsoft felt like making a Linux distribution. They've tuned it to work well in Azure, and it has only the things that one needs to run on the cloud, and no fluff, which is nice because it pairs well with K3S, which is the Kubernetes no fluff
Exactly.
version as well. So this is nice and pared down, very clean.
Right, right. And this is super important, very super valid points here, because this is what it means to create a managed service like end to end, including the operating system. So we looked at the nodes, and now I think that we are ready to do some, to do some magic here in terms of rolling an application and see how it looks like. So let me just kind of refresh this so we will be able to see the feed. What I'm going to do first thing first is I'm going to watch the pods, right? So I'm watching the pods on of the application, the Contoso POS application that is running on both clusters. What I want to show you is side by side what will happen as we are rolling the update. Now, the use case here is that basically Contoso, let's just imagine that they want to add a new category. Now they have a new line of business, so they want to start selling toys in those, in those stores. And they also want to take the opportunity and maybe update the interface, like how that's the update that we want to do. So right now what we're seeing is we're seeing version 1. We see that we don't have any toys, we just have groceries, right, vegetables and all those good stuff, but no toys. So now that we're watching the pods, I'm going to switch to VS Code. And what we're seeing here is we are seeing basically a clone of the fork that I just showed you, right? Remember that application? I showed you that in the GitHub's configuration. And this is what we're seeing right now. Now, what I want to do is I want to basically make a change on, first of all, on AKS, and then rolling that change after I validated that everything is working to the IoT cluster or the Edge Essential cluster. So Scott, what I'm showing you right now is Git remote V. I just want to show you that I'm actually listening to that repository. So there is an alignment between what I showed you in the GitHub's configuration and the actual fork, right, that we are working against. So that's one thing. Now, what we're seeing here is we're seeing, first of all, the dev YAML, right? We looked at the path. We said that we have a dev path and we also have a production path. So I'll scroll all the way, and this is the important piece right here. This is the important section. We can see that, and this is the AKS deployment, right? So we can see that the cameras are, the flag here is set to false when it comes to enabling the cameras, because again, we don't need the cameras integration in the cloud. There's no purpose to that. But also the new category is set to false. So what we did is basically we took that application and we abstracted the important things into a Kubernetes YAML manifest. So the only thing that I will have to do is just change that flag so we'll be able to see a rolling update on the application. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change this one to true, right, and save that. And we can see that VS Code is already telling me that there is a change. By the way, Scott, and I thought that you might dig this, because I was preparing this demo and, just kind of running those commands over and over and over again. What I did is creating something cool, like creating this lazy git function that will allow me to just hit lazy git every time I'm rolling an update as I was doing the testing and all that. So that function holds basically git add, git commit with a message that I'm going to have to put, and git push. So, the update will be easy. So
Does not the -A imply the first?
That?
The -A on the commit implies the first line.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you're doing 2 adds.
Well, I'm doing one add, and then I'm doing a commit, and then I'm pushing that change into the fork. That's really what I'm doing here. So let's clear the screen. And you know what? Let me zoom in just a bit here. And we made a change. So now we have a change ready to be committed. And let's just change the message here. We are pushing an update with the new toys category to the dev environment. So I'm going to push that, and then I'm going to switch real fast into the Git pods listening. So now that I push the change, we can see that everything is okay. And now you can see on the left that there is a rolling update happening. So what we're doing right now is we're basically testing, making sure that the application is deploying. And if I'll refresh this, we can see that now the interface is different, and we also have the toys category and bunch of toys added to the interface. So now Contoso knows that, okay, so the interface is working, we have the toys category, everything is fine. And also on the bottom, we can see that there was a rolling update, basically Flux, the Flux extension that is installed on the AKS cluster is picking up the changes that we made on the fork and use that in order to do the rolling update. So that's piece number one. And now that we know that this is working, I'll switch over to VS Code again. And here, this is the production manifest. So again, we'll mark that. And you can see here that this is actually the camera are set to true in this case, because this is the AKS Edge Essential, the store, but the new category is set to false. So let's do that again. We'll change this to true. And this time I'll change the message just, for the sake of this demo. And we are pushing a change to the prod environment, and we'll make sure that everything is okay. And now we'll be able to see the rolling update happening in the production environment. Now, because cameras are set to true in this case, let's refresh, see if we already have the new interface. And there we go. You can see that now the interface is exactly the same on the two deployments, only the production deployment got the cameras integration and the toys category. So this really short and sweet demo, Scott, was really about showing you how you can take an application that was designed for the edge, but you're actually able to do integration and development in the cloud, and then starting to do this pipeline of rolling applications to the edge. Now that we have AKS Edge Essentials, we can support that on low footprint, small form factor infrastructure.
That's very cool. And the local, the NUC version of this it's in the cloud, because the cloud really just means other people's computers, and it's not in your room. Well, in this case it is, but it's away. It's at the edge. So the edge is part of the cloud now. That's pretty fantastic.
Some people may argue that I have a small Azure data center in my office.
So I would think that is a fair argument that you might in fact win.
Right.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for showing us this today.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you again for the time.
All right. I am learning all about Azure Kubernetes Service on Windows IoT today on Azure Friday.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Azure Friday. Now I need you to like it, comment on it, tell your friends, retweet it. Watch more Azure Friday.